killed today, and he was built this magnificent museum. And I want to start with, tell us a little bit about your life growing up. Where were you originally from?
Well, I was raised on Millsaps Road. If you know where Sheets is on Highway 115, if you go right past that and turn back to the right, there's a road that goes all the way through the museum road. Back when I was growing up, that was a dirt dead-end road. That was called Sigmund Drive. And I lived in a little brick house about halfway down. My parents had bought it back right after I was born, about 1955. And I lived there the first 9 years of my life and played on that road and rode my bicycle down to the store, the little service station that was there at the end of the road. And then about 1964, 63, 64, my father said, I hear they're going to annex this into the city. I'm not going to live in the city. So he bought a house on South Greenbrier Road. So we moved out there, and I spent the rest of my childhood on South Greenbrier Road. And actually my mother, my 96-year-old mother, still lives there. So it's still.
Oh wow!
So, been local right here all my life. My father got annexed to at Greenbrier Road before they annexed his old house. So
oh my goodness! So he would have
yeah, it was better
staying where he'd been. That's interesting. So you went to which schools did you go to?
Started Monticello School, first, second, and third grade, and then fourth, fifth, sixth, I went to Wayside School out on Salisbury Road. And then, believe it or not, then seventh and eighth grade, I was in the Troutman district. So I went to Troutman Junior High School,
wow.
all the way from South Greenbrier Road. If you know where JB's is, that road that goes by JB's down to the trash dump, on that road, we rode a bus all the way down to Troutman. So 2 years at Troutman. My freshman year at South Iredale, and then the districts were changed, and then the last 3 years I was sent to North Iredale, where I graduated.
Wow, you were on Greenbrier Road, and you went to South Iredale and North Iredale, but not Statesville.
Yeah, not Statesville, yeah.
And yet it was annexed into the city limits of Statesville.
Yeah. Well, at that point it had to be.
Oh, okay, but it's, still, that's quite interesting.
Yeah, one way about as long as the other.
So, tell me a little bit about your parents. What kind of work did they do?
My father worked at J.C. Penney Warehouse. He started out on the docks in 1947 when the company first opened the warehouse on Salisbury Road. And he became a foreman. When I was a kid, he was kind of a supervisor. Early on, he worked the third shift, and then eventually he worked the first shift in his later years. But he spent 43 or 4 years, I think, there before he retired. My mother was a stay-at-home mother. She never got a driver's license. We only had one car, so she didn't need her license. And later on, I have 3 younger sisters. After they got through school, she did go to work up the corner at the ARP Church in the daycare center. And worked there for probably 10 years and then retired from there. But you've been a camera geek for a long time, haven't you?
Well, yeah. My dad taught photography for 24 years for the Air Force. And so I grew up in dark rooms from literally I was about two and a half years old. My sister used to develop pictures. Dad would enlarge them and print them, and she would develop them and hand them down to me, and I would put them over in the wash water and wash them and then stick them in the dryer. And so I've been, literally I was in diapers. He's got pictures of us working in the dark room with it.
That is so cool. So you got it naturally.
Yeah, I grew up with photography, but
have I ever shown you my palettes of negatives downstairs?
Yes,
okay.
that is truly amazing. I want to work with you on that, and maybe someday get those processed into a computer.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So your father worked at J.C. Penney's warehouse, and your mom was a stay-at-home mom. And what, growing up, sparked your interests?
Well, as as a child, I was so fortunate that my parents and grandparents had a love for history and love for telling stories, and actually a love for Iredell County. And my mother was from Davie County, so I would hear stories from North Iredell. My father was from Harmony area, so I would hear all these stories about how great it was growing up back in those days. And they just instilled for me an appreciation for my hometown and the county in which I was living. And they kept me enthused by the stories they told, a lot of ghost stories. You know, what kid doesn't like ghost stories? So a lot of those thrown in. And I don't know, coupled with that, I've always been a collector. For some reason, I inherited the collector disease. Neither of my parents had that, and my mother still doesn't understand it, but my father certainly didn't. But I would go in the backyard and look for rocks and quartz rocks, and had a rock collection. Then I advanced to postage stamps. I go to the mailbox and get the mail and look for different kinds of postage stamps. Then I advanced, when I was 7 or 8 years old, I advanced into pennies. I was trying to collect a penny from every year I could find. And then I remember one day lying on my bed, opening up a pack of baseball cards and looking at the back of them. And one of them said, hometown, Statesville, North Carolina. And that just blew me away.
Oh, wow.
I'm thinking, here a guy is playing in the major leagues from the same town I'm from. So
Can you know who that was?
it was Herm Starrett.
Wow.
So
I
I thought,
that ran the business supply.
yes, absolutely, same family, yeah. So Herm, he was a 1962 or so graduate of Cool Spring High School, the same precinct, area that I lived in. So he was kind of like a neighbor. And so I remember my buddies who collected baseball cards, we would swap back and forth. I would swap them my Mickey Mantles for Herm Starrett's. So I had a whole stack of Herm Starrett's, and they had a whole stack of Mickey Mantles, which were thousands of dollars now, guys. It cheated me, but that's all right. My Herm Starrett's worth about probably a dime or a quarter a piece now. So, and then.
But it had a personal meaning.
Yeah, I had to have them. And there were others. There was like Dave Jolly from Stony Point. I think he had his hometown on a couple of his cards in Statesville. Barry Moore came along, born in Statesville. So there were several of them that I like to try to gather. And then I would go to, there was a little coin shop uptown here, Steele's Coin Shop. And he had a lot of local history stuff in it, like postcards and things like that. And I would, my daddy would take me and let me off, and I would go in there and look at his stuff. And along about that same time, the county historian Homer Keever would write local history stories in the paper, and my parents would read those to me about the old days in Statesville. That just fascinated me.
He used to spend hours at the Wrecking Landmark going through the old fish
microfilm. Yeah, microfilm machines. And by the time I got my driver's license, I was hot and heavy. I was ready to collect anything I could find related to Statesville and Iredell County. And it went from postcards to like tobacco tags to advertising pieces to photographs. The little coin shop that followed Steele's was John Carson. And I would go in there, and he would find me local history stuff. By the time I was about 17 or 18, I got up the nerve to actually beat Homer Keever. He had a little typewriter at the Record Landmark building, and I would find a picture, and I would very meekly go in there because he was kind of to me, he was a little bit gruff, but he was just an adult, I guess. But I would take it in and show it to him. And he would tell me stories about it. That would just tickle me.
He was a very quiet man.
He was.
And because he would sit there and for hours he was just completely isolated with that microfiche machine and going through that and typing, and then he'd go back and
on the old typewriter. Banging out typewriter on sheets of paper. Then he would cut it and put it in little shoe boxes for files. So.
Right.
But he did. He was our.
I always wondered what happened to him.
And on top of that, he was a Methodist preacher. He taught at Central School.
See, I didn't know that.
And wrote the first really good, and I guess only, pretty much, history of Iredell County.
Mm-hmm. Now you've written a couple of books too, haven't you?
Yeah, I've done some small things about some of the buildings downtown. The biggest project was in the shadow of the clock being the clock up on the square, the shadow being the square itself. I wrote a book back during COVID. Wasn't able to see grandkids, so I would sit in my chair and I started pulling in all my research, and so I wrote a book, probably, I don't know, 275 pages on the history of the square, and that 2 or 3 acre area right there, and the buildings, the 4 buildings on the square. I pretty much took the square and took those lots from when they were first auctioned off in 1790 up to 1990, and I wrote the history of those 4 corners and all the cool things that have happened there. You know, when I was a kid, that was the center of the universe, literally. I mean, it was just like a sacred place. When you walked across there, it was a sacred place that even had its own name, the Square, and there was a mystery to it. So from the time I was walking, holding my mother and father's finger, and walking across the square, and remembering old Casey Jones, the cop. Did you ever hear of Casey Jones? He was a Statesville police officer. Yeah. His beat was the square. Back when cops had beats, his beat was the square.
That was back when they had the old turnkeys that you had to go around to different posts and everything and turn it to show that you had covered that area.
Yeah. But Casey, he was quite a guy. In the afternoon, he was a crossing guard for the school. But during the day and on Saturday, he would help you get across the street, and he would always hand me, and I thought he was just doing it for me. I'm sure he did it for a lot of kids. He'd hand me a stick of juicy fruit chewing gum, which for a kid was like
gold.
Yeah. So I blame Casey, though, for my first cavity. Yeah. It was worth it. He was quite a guy.
But it's amazing how certain people like that will cast an impression that sticks with you your whole life.
The memories.
Yeah.
That come back with that.
So, what did you go to college or?
Yeah, I ended up going to Mitchell College. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and so I went to Mitchell kind of as just, I don't know what else to do. Went to Mitchell. I was there 2 years, and I got very, very close with a couple of the history instructors up there. Oscar Stradley was one, and Lewis Brown was another. But they really set me on fire with history and local history on top of that. And I remember right before graduation, Oscar Stradley said, "Well, what are you going to do next year?" And I said, "Well, my daddy's working at JCPenney warehouse. I was working there on the mini shift at night. I said, I'll probably just get a job at JCPenney warehouse." He said, "Have you ever thought about teaching school?" I said, "No, not really." So I looked into it, and it wasn't too late for me to get into to apply for Appalachian. I was probably one of the last people to apply for college from Mitchell, but I applied at Appalachian, and lo and behold, it took me. So I went to Appalachian 2 years and got an associate's degree in history. Came back got married. Came back to Iredell County, and there weren't any history teaching jobs available. So I got a job with Lowe's Food Store and was a store manager for Lowe's Foods in High Point, North Carolina. And then I got transferred as a store manager of Lowe's Food Store on what's the name of that road? In Hickory. I was there for about a year or so. So I was a grocery store manager. And then I had a job, an opportunity to get a teaching job at North Rowan High School. My wife had just accepted a job teaching art, so I went to North Rowan High School. I taught there 3 years. I taught vocational education, industrial cooperative training, helping kids find jobs and go out and work.
Excellent.
That kind of thing. So I did that there. So my wife, she transferred to Statesville High as an art teacher. And an old veteran teacher at Statesville High School, one of the most beloved men that has ever come through Statesville High. He was a teacher and coach. He was retiring. He happened to teach the same thing I was teaching. Herb Samsel, he retired. So I was able to take his classes. I tell people I can never replace Herb Samsel, but I replaced him in the classroom.
Yeah, I went to school with his couple of his sons.
Yeah.
Were in high school whenever I was there. And of course, they eventually named the sports area there after him.
He's quite a guy.
So, go ahead with your teaching and how.
Okay, I taught at Statesville High School. I guess about 11 years. I had an opportunity to become the assistant principal there. Did that for about 5 years. From 1994 to 1999, for a little over 5 years, I was principal at South Iredell High School in the southern end of Troutman. And then in 1999, I was until I retired in 2009. I was assistant superintendent for the high schools and middle schools.
Okay.
Middle school system. So all my careers.
A lot of responsibility, and
Well,
especially when you get into the administration
lots of work to be done.
part of it. So, what got you actually started on? You originally opened at Gordon's.
I actually opened before that. When I retired in 2009, I visited our mayor at the time, who is still our mayor, Costi Cute. I said, Costi, it's hard for me to describe it, but I think I've got enough stuff for a local history museum dedicated to Statesville, Iredell County. He had never seen it. He knew I was a collector. And I said, if I had an old building that I could use for free, I don't have really money to pay, but he said, I tell you what, a friend of mine, Bill Stiles, has the old balloon factory on Salisbury Road right across from Black, at the time it was Black Pontiac, now it's Black PNC. He said, it's empty, why don't you go in there and set up your stuff in there? So I did. I set up an exhibit in there, and I stayed there for a year. The building was sold. So I moved out, packed everything up in storage units.
See, and I patrolled that area.
Yeah.
But I never knew you were there.
Oh yeah.
There was never really any advertising or anything that made anybody aware that that was anything other than just an empty factory there.
That's pretty cool. So packed everything in a tractor trailer unit that I could put in there, and the rest of it went to my basement. And I was kind of in limbo for 6 months or so, and then Mayor Cute came to me again. He said, the DSDC, Downtown Statesville Development Corporation, has a building they just bought. It's the old Army-Navy store on South Center Street, which is right across the street where the gelato store is now.
Right.
And he said, why don't you move your stuff into there and set back up again? So I did. And I stayed there about 5 years. And again, the SDC and the city was very, very helpful. They didn't charge me for rent. I just paid utilities. And then one day, Barry Gordon, with Gordon Furniture and Gordon Iron and Metal out on Salisbury Road, came to me and said, we have an empty furniture store. They had closed the furniture store. We're gonna rent half of it to Special Treasures, Children's Home of Iredell County, as a thrift store. Why don't you use the other half for your collection? He said, you can stay as long as you want. You can stay forever. I said, well, that's hard to resist. So I did. And I was there for another 5 or 6 years, I guess. And I got to meet some of the most incredible people in the world. The Gordon family. Every single member of the Gordon family welcomed me into their family. They say they adopted me, and I certainly adopted them. But they let me stay there, and I never paid a single dime for rent or utilities or anything.
That's truly amazing. But you're doing something for the community. And,
Well,
and
I hope so.
they were.
I hope so. But then,
The relationship between the Cutays and the Gordons is very tight also.
oh yeah, yeah. I'm sure it was a community effort behind the scenes. But they were very kind. And then, there's a fella, Jimmy Wilson. He retired from G.L. Wilson Construction Company. He would always come through and he would always say, what's going to happen to this stuff when you're gone? And I would always say, I'd point to my sidekick at the time, who was Tom Poston, a beloved retired superintendent from the school system. At the time, he was between 90 and 100. Each time he would ask me. And I would always say, well, Dr. Poston's going to be in charge of it when I'm gone. We would always have a big laugh. Dr. Poston, he would laugh the loudest. But then Dr. Poston passed at the age of 99, almost 100, I think, when he passed. And Jimmy came in one day and he said, okay, now seriously, what are you going to do with this stuff when you're gone? And I said, Jimmy, you'll be happy to know, my wife and I, we did our wills, and all this would go to the city. And when we're gone. And Jimmy said, oh no, that ain't going to happen. Who knows what they'll do with it. but anyway.
That's true.
I'm sure he was joking. I took that as a joke. But he said, what
But still, you have elected officials that
who knows who the elected officials are going to be in 25, 50 years.
Right.
But anyway. So he said, what if I help you with a substantial grant, seed money, to help you find a permanent location that you won't have to worry about it after you're gone. And I said, well, that would be fantastic. And he said, if you could have any building downtown, where would you want to put the collection? Well, very quickly I said, well, I know this could never happen because I couldn't even imagine this in my wildest dream. But the most historic site in Statesville, it would be old lot number 30, where the first business in town was established, where the Hotel Iredale stood, the biggest, most beautiful hotel in this part of the state, and also where Woolworth used to be. That would be my first choice. And he said, well, let me see what I can do. So a few weeks later, he came back and he said, well, I had talked to the owner of the building, Stanley Holland, and we've come to an agreement that he's going to let you move into that building. Wow. And I thought, oh my gosh, my wild, I didn't even have, I could never have dreamed of that big.
Right. I remember this, when I came to Statesville, this was Woolworth.
Yeah, Woolworth. I mean, in later years, for 20, 25 years, it was Westmoreland Antique Store. Right. So I'd been in here a lot, so I knew the building upside down and backwards. But so he and Stamey worked out a deal, Stamey Holland III, where I would be able to move into here. And then just a month or two, maybe 3 months later, Jimmy Wilson died. He had a heart attack and died. So before I even had a chance to ask him what the agreement was between him and Stanley Holland, he was gone. And I haven't had the nerve to ask Stanley what their
agreement was, whether there was anything in writing or was it verbal.
But I've been assured by Stanley that we will be here for a long, long time. And Stanley Holland, just like the Gordon family, he's like family to me now. He is the kindest, one of the kindest, most benevolent men in Statesville. Jimmy and the Stamey and the Gordons love Statesville. There are a lot of people in Statesville who love this community like I do, but they really love it, and they show it not only with their, they just show it,
well, this is the heart of it. I mean, you've captured the spirit of this county, and with the history and brought it all together, and the community of people that you've brought together, and the just the entertainment, the music, and it's amazing. It truly is.
Well, from the beginning, we wanted this to become a destination point in previous locations over the years, we've had people from every country you can imagine, definitely all 50 states. But and what we try to do is, you know, if you come in here from another state, maybe another generation, we try to encourage you to look for something in here that can help you remember what your childhood was like. Maybe an old picture of an old car or a Coca-Cola sign or something.
There's something universal about the growing of the time period.
Yeah, we try to get you to think back to your childhood, whatever it was, and think about maybe some good memories, hopefully not too bad memories, but we try to get you to think back and reflect and try to just kind of think about how history, what history looks like and how important it is in our lives. And that's what I do with the kids. I try to teach them that history is important. History's fun. History's cool. I try to teach them that you don't have to agree with history or disagree with it, but you definitely need to study it and be familiar with it, because history has proven that we as a country and we as a humanity make lots of mistakes. Far from perfect.
Make it over and over again.
Yeah, but when you study history, hopefully you won't keep making those mistakes over and over again. So that's what I try to instill.
It is an important place to be able to come and reflect back, and so many people in this area, they get to look at their grandparents and their family members on the walls here.
Yeah.
And
yeah, we have people come in and they will see them shed a tear. They'll see something that really touches them emotionally.
Many of these businesses are no longer, and industries are no longer even here, that they may have grown up working in.
Yeah. And one of the things that we get back from it is people are willing to share some of their stories. They'll look at a photograph and they'll share a touching story about someone they loved or a place they loved to go, and something funny or something tragic that happened. So we savor all those stories. I need to do a better job of writing those down and documenting them, or videos, doing videos on them. But hopefully that's a new component we're going to try to start, is oral history project around the conference table, interviewing old timers and hearing their story, because everybody's story is important. Just because you're not famous or not well known, your story is just as important as anybody else's. We want to hear your stories, and we want to save your stories for future generations to grow from.
It's the bedrock of what we're building on.
Yeah.
So, you spoke a little bit about when you got married and all. Tell me a little bit about it.
Well, I got married as a teacher. As a teacher, that kind of helped with my search also, because as a young teacher, especially men, when you're married and have children and teaching school, you have to have a second occupation. So my second job was I joined my good friend Brady Johnson, and we became the night janitors at the Statesville Police Department.
That's where I think we first met.
Yeah. So we were there every afternoon from about 4:30 to 8:30, cleaning johns and filling up paper towels and scrubbing down desks and mopping floors and cleaning up the interrogation rooms and the evidence rooms and the dark room. And I became good friends with C.L. Johnson, Clyde Johnson, Luther Johnson.
Yeah.
He was the darkroom man, and when he would do a photograph of like a wreck or something that happened, I would ask him if he could print me a little copy too for the collection. So over the years, that's why my Statesville Police Department collection is a whole lot larger than anything else in here, because I was able to meet all those guys.
Right.
Those are my heroes. I had a big banner made. I haven't got it up yet, but it says Hometown Heroes, because you guys at the Statesville Police Department are my hometown heroes when I was growing up, and even as an adult. And you still, they still are.
They were for me growing up, because when I was going through Statesville High School, it was a very turbulent time.
Yes.
There. And so it was the first time, I think, that we actually had police officers in the school. And of course, I was working for the newspaper back then, so I knew them from in school and also out of school. They would call me in the middle of the night to come photograph a crime scene or something, and I would do, like the front of the house would be for the newspaper, and then I'd do photography work for them. And that was how how I got to meet
people I've ever met working in the Statesville Police Department.
There were some really great people there,
including yourself. It's one of those selfless people who, put aside their family long enough to go to work in dangerous situations for the benefit of this community. And if you can do that, I respect you, and my hat's off to you. Even today, same for today.
Well, it was funny because I had never planned on becoming a police officer. I was always interested in photography. That was the thing I did. And D.Z. Brown told me back in the 70s that someday I was going to be a police officer.
Oh, wow.
And I told him, I said, no, there's just no way, And of course, back then I had long hair, and he actually, we were talking one day after I dropped off some pictures at the back of the police department, and he said, let me have your camera. Sit in my patrol car. I'm going to get a picture of you. Now, and he took a picture of me sitting in his patrol car with this big grin on my face, And so I left Statesville for 16 years and went to Orlando, and then ended up coming back and was living up in Boone and looking for work up there, and ended up applying for trying to apply for a job in law enforcement, but they said you had to go to the school first.
Right.
So I went to North Wilkesboro School for Law Enforcement and their BLET program, and found out that the departments up there had already hired somebody and they were paying for them to go to school.
Oh, yeah.
So I realized that when I got out of school, I wasn't going to have a job. So the very last course that was taught up there was taught by D.Z. Brown.
Oh, wow. That was fate.
And he walked into the room and looked at me and he said, see, I told you you'd be here someday.
Yeah,
This was like 20 years later after he had told me that I was actually. So he said, well, where are you going to go to work? And I said, well, I didn't really have any job openings right now. And he said, well, put in your application in Statesville. And I said, well, would you vouch for my character? And he said, I will definitely tell him you're a character.
D.Z. will always be one of my heroes.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? And he said, just put your application in. And that's how I ended up coming back here.
Wow. Great story. I love those stories. That's the kind of stories we thrive on every day.
Life is a building block. You don't just get from one point to the other without some direction. And
one little thing can determine the rest of your life. If you hadn't done that, you may be who knows where you'd be today.
Very true. Very true. But I definitely owe him a lot for my whole direction in life. And he was a person that made you want to live up to good qualities. And he did so much for educating people, and he never talked down to anybody.
Right, no.
And I like those things about him.
Yeah, he's a good, decent man, and most of the police officers at the Statesville Police Department were good, decent men. D.Z., he was an old school, he'd been through it as a young man, and back when police officers maybe had different situations to deal with than they did in the 80s, 90s when he was detective, assistant police chief. I think he may have been interim chief at one time. So, but he handled all that well and was always very kind. His men and women loved him. His officers loved him. His office staff loved him. He's a decent man.
Well, when we came to Statesville, my dad was the district scout executive for the Boy Scouts, and we moved here in 1970 onto Water Street over here. And So he started the very first police explorer post with my dad. And the explorer posts back then, the ones that came on, 3 of them went on to become police officers from the police explorers. And so when I came back on, one of them was actually my training instructor.
Who was that?
Campbell, Tommy Campbell.
Tommy Campbell. No. Isn't that something?
But he came up through the explorer program originally. And so Mike Flory.
Mike Flory.
And
rest in peace, Mike.
Yeah.
We have his casket flag over here in our collection. Kind of display that.
So, going from Gordon's, you got this place.
Yeah.
Now then, from what I heard, you loaded up this entire museum and put it on carts and rolled it from 3 blocks down.
Well, actually, when we moved out of the Gordon building, I had a little 8-foot trailer, and most of it was loaded on that. Some of it we had to wheel up the hill and back down the hill. But we brought it all into the basement of this building and stored it for about a year while this beautiful building was being transformed by Stanley. And we didn't have an elevator, but Stanley said, well, I'm going to fix the elevator, so you're going to have an elevator at some point. So we waited. When we finally got the inspection, it was a matter of moving everything from the basement upstairs. Now, most of the large stuff would not fit on the elevator, so we had to put those on carts, roll them out the back door, roll them up Cooper Street, roll them up East Broad to the square, which is all uphill, but finally downhill, all the way downhill to the front door of the Holland building. So it took some doing. It took a lot of grunt work. My wife, she jumped in there and she helped me every day. We would do some 12, 14-hour days getting that done. Had had some help. Young man from Mitchell College, Dustin Hicks, he helped a lot. Rob Collier helped a lot. So we had some help getting things done. But it's over about a 3-month period, we got everything up here, and it was just a matter of using a little artistic flair, trying to say, well, here's a pile of stuff from East Broad. So how many of these little cubicles how much wall space will I need for East Broad? Here's the movie section, how much will it need? So just kind of working kind of like a big puzzle. So now it's fairly theme oriented. If you go into a cubicle, it's pretty much that theme. South States will have one, North States will have one, East and West of course. But and then we have like the square area. Then we have sports and memorabilia, baseball section, football section, and movie section. Got to have Tom Dooley, the town who hung a man that became famous in 1868. We got to have a wall dedicated to him. So it's all come together. We still working here every day, trying to put labels on things I haven't had time to label yet, and it'll be a work in progress for as long as I'm alive. And we're going to try to keep it fresh for the community so that when people come in, they can see something different each time. We'll try to refresh the displays. There's so many photographs, so many things we don't have room for. Still have a basement full of stuff that we can draw from and change things out. But if people come in and say, well, where's your church section? Well, I don't have a specific church section, but that's something that we might want to think about sometime. Right. I'm doing a special section on churches in Statesville and Iredell County. How about your agriculture? Well, I don't have no agriculture. How about Baton Rouge? So there's a lot of opportunities ahead to grow. Yeah, so we're going to continue.
And now you bring music in,
we have so much fun around here. We have lectures. Our next lecture will be Dr. Curtis Abel will be lecturing on Zebulon Vance, the Civil War governor who lived in Statesville for a while after the Civil War.
Now, Statesville was actually the capital of North Carolina for a short period of time.
We claimed that. You have to use a little bit of discretion with that, but yes, it was. But some will argue, well, no, it wasn't. But the governor was stationed here, and
operated out of Vermont.
If the capital is where the governor is, we were definitely the capital.
Okay. Now then, do you just rely on individual support, or do you get grants for operating this?
We're at the point now that we're going to be looking for some grant money to keep us going. Luckily, we have the Jimmy Wilson Foundation that we're relying on. We're relying on the generosity of Stanley Holland, but we're at the point now where we're going to need some operational money. Pay utilities, right? Things like that. It probably costs $1,000 a month just for utilities and that kind of thing for a building this size. And so we're going to be looking for some sponsors. If you know someone who wants to maybe needs an opportunity to help their community, this might be a good place to invest your money. And we would love to hear from you. We also are always looking for anything history related, like photographs, advertising pieces, just anything related to our community that we don't have. We're looking for donations to that kind of thing. So when Grandma dies, don't throw away all her photograph albums. Bring them up here and let us look at it. We'll try to find a place to store it. Still have a basement full of stuff like that you're like scrapbooks that you can't really put out, like historic documents. You can't really put out because of the light. Might fade them out.
The research base.
Yeah, but we have that in the basement, so we'll be working on trying to get that documented, organized, and alphabetized in some kind of digital format where it's searchable. And hopefully someday this whole collection will be searchable. And we'll have, we talked about doing QR codes on some of the sections and trying to get something history you can pull up on your phone. So we still got lots of work here. Let's go downstairs and I'll show you the new venue. So, you'll have to use your imagination. Imagine a wall right there, first of all, and a wall right there to separate all of my stuff. And this will be the music venue, the entertainment venue. We don't have a name for it yet, but it borders, the entrance will be on Cooper Street. So maybe something like the Cooper Street Music Hall or listening room or theater or something along those lines. Up here, this would be the stage area. We will have a wall right along here. This will be the stage. It will be a huge stage, large enough for some theater activities, plenty of room for bands, and heck, you could probably put an orchestra up here if we wanted to. Dance, we could do that. We can certainly do the Full Bloom Film Festival screenings here, and any kind of music and lectures we want to do, we can do right here. So if you look out there, that would be the seating area with about 125 or 130 seats. We're thinking that we want to do kind of a speakeasy sort of theme because of the history of this building. Where we're standing, we would have been at the very back of the old Hotel Iredale that was built here in 1885. It burned down in 1918, but during that time, there were lots of businesses down here. There was a candy kitchen here. Right over here was the Cooper House Saloon when the hotel was first built. So lots of alcohol-related history. Even before the hotel was built, back in this area right here, there was a brick building on the back lot here where they distilled whiskey that was brought in from North Iredale, from the stills of North Iredale, and it's brought in here and refined and put into jugs and barrels and kegs and that kind of thing. Use your imagination. Just think about this. Think about a speakeasy type of theme, like a prohibition type theme, where you have to have some kind of special code or special little door to go through. I don't know. We're working on that now, but hopefully within the next 2 years, when you come here, this will be a nice facility for you to come and enjoy.